Something is happening behind closed doors right now, and the silence around it is louder than any record Drake has ever released. Because just hours after the Iceman album crash-landed into the world, one of the most plugged-in figures in the entire culture, the man who has been standing shoulder to shoulder with TDE for over a decade, the man Kendrick Lamar himself greets like family every single time the cameras catch them in the same room, suddenly walked up to a microphone, looked dead into the lens, and said the words that nobody in hip-hop was prepared to hear. He said he just signed an NDA. He said something massive is on the way. He said it could land in an hour, it could land in 2, it could surface tomorrow, it could detonate next week. And then he was cut off mid-sentence, as if somebody behind the scenes panicked and realized he was already saying too much. If you are a real student of this culture, if you understand how the dominoes fall when a name like Dawg sits in a room and almost slips the secret, then you already feel it. You already know. Something is being built in the shadows right now, and it is being built specifically to answer the noise that Drake just made. Before we step 1 inch deeper into this, slap that like button into the floor, lock in on the subscribe button, and turn the notifications all the way up, because the next chapter of this war is about to be written in real time, and you do not want to be the last person on the timeline to find out. Stay locked in. Let us paint the room the way it actually happened, because the details matter, and the details are screaming. The Iceman album finally lands, the leaks are flying sideways across every timeline you can name, and the entire hip-hop ecosystem braces itself for the usual storm of takes, recap clips, and tribal warfare in the comments section. Then, almost on cue, Dawg, the founder of TDE, the godfather figure of the entire Kendrick Lamar movement, sits down for what looks like a casual conversation about the project. He starts breaking down Drake's choices on the album. He starts unpacking that particular song where Drake leans on the sound of the Bay, the song that has been marketed as some kind of tribute, the one being floated around as homage. And Dawg is not buying it. He does not call it homage. He calls it what it actually is, which is a calculated disrespect aimed straight at Kendrick Lamar, dressed up in Bay Area clothing so it could sneak past the radar. Then, in the middle of that breakdown, he pauses. The energy in the room shifts. He looks at the camera with the face of somebody holding a grenade in his hand, and he drops the bomb that has the whole internet melting down right now. He says he signed an NDA. He says he cannot get specific. He says everyone should stay on alert. He says it could be 1 hour away, it could be 2, it could be tomorrow, it could be next week. And before he can finish the sentence, somebody jumps in and cuts the moment in half, as if the room itself was scared of what he was about to reveal. Now let me explain why this is not just another rumor, and why this is not just another vague Twitter whisper that disappears by the morning. Because if you grew up watching the rise of the entire West Coast Renaissance, you already know the weight that Dawg carries inside that camp. This is not some random podcaster trying to farm a viral moment. This is not a leaker trying to milk 15 seconds of fame. This is the man who helped build Kendrick from the ground up. This is the man who is family with Schoolboy Q. This is the man who shows up at every pop-out, every TDE Christmas event, every private celebration where the actual inner circle gathers behind the velvet rope. And every single time the cameras catch Kendrick in the same frame with him, there is no tension, no distance, no awkward energy. There is genuine love. There is family. So when a man like that sits down, looks at the camera, and tells you in his own words that he signed an NDA, that he physically cannot say what he knows, but that something massive is incoming, you do not treat that the same way you would treat a random blog post. You treat it the way you would treat a 4-star general quietly telling you that something is about to happen at the border, because that is the level of credibility we are dealing with, and the level of credibility decides whether you panic or whether you prepare. Let us slow this down even more, because there is a detail in here that most people are skipping over. He signed an NDA. Think about that for 1 full second. Read that sentence again and let it actually breathe. Random fans do not get handed NDAs. Random insiders do not get handed NDAs. Spectators on the sideline do not get handed NDAs. The only people who sit close enough to a project to be legally required to keep their mouth shut are the people standing inside the building while the project is being constructed. So when Top Dawg himself is the one being asked to sign that paper, it tells you exactly where he was, exactly what he saw, and exactly why the rest of us are being kept at arm's length until the moment is ready. And this is not the first time it's happened either. Rewind the tape back to the Squabble Up music video, the visual that practically rewrote the cultural rulebook overnight, and you'll remember Top Dawg was present on that set too, and he had to sign a similar agreement back then as well. So if you're sitting there wondering whether he's bluffing, whether he's throwing a fake teaser into the air just to keep the engagement metrics climbing, the historical pattern says something very different. He's been here before. He has stood in this exact position before, and every single time he has stood in this position, something real has followed. So now let us pivot to what actually triggered this entire conversation in the first place, because the timing here is not random and the timing here is not innocent. The whole sit-down began with a deep dive into the Iceman record, where Drake leans heavily on the Bay Area sound. The track has been marketed in some corners as a love letter to a region that birthed entire subgenres of rap. The Bay is sacred ground. The Bay gave us Too Short, the Bay gave us E40, the Bay gave us Mac Dre, and the Bay continues to feed the bloodstream of West Coast culture in ways most outsiders cannot even measure. So if you are an artist standing in 2026 trying to borrow that sound, you better come correct, you better come humble, and you better come with intent that is bigger than a chess move in a beef. Drake did the opposite. He took the Bay sound, dressed it up in glossy production, and aimed it at Kendrick Lamar like a slingshot. That is not tribute, that is not appreciation. That is using the spirit of a fallen legend like Mac Dre as ammunition in a personal war. And Top Dawg called it out with no filter. He compared it to the energy people felt when other artists tried to weaponize the memory of Tupac. Same playbook, different costume. You do not honor a legend by turning their sonic fingerprint into a weapon against the very region that raised them. You exploit the legend. You hollow out the legacy. You turn a tribute into a transaction. And the second you do that, the culture sees you, the culture remembers, and the culture eventually answers back. Now here is where the story gets even more electric, because Top Dawg is not the only voice in this conversation. Independent threads have been quietly pointing in the same direction for weeks. Isaiah Rashad has openly said that he has seen Kendrick in the studio more often recently than he ever did during the years they were officially label mates. Think about how loaded that statement is for 1 second. Kendrick Lamar, the most calculated artist of his generation, the man who treats album cycles like military campaigns, is reportedly living inside the studio at a pace nobody has witnessed from him in years. That is not the schedule of a man on vacation. That is not the rhythm of someone resting on a victory lap. That is the discipline of a craftsman preparing something specific. And when you stack that pattern on top of the news that Mustard, the producer who engineered the most viral rap moment in modern history, is back in the same room with him, the picture starts forming on its own. You do not pull Mustard back into the lab to make filler music. You do not summon that chemistry for casual freestyles or throwaway loosies. When those two link up, the air pressure in the entire genre shifts. The last time it happened, the world watched a single song detonate every chart on the planet and rewrite the language of beef forever. But pump the brakes for 1 second, because there's a temptation right now to assume that whatever's being built is going to drop in the next 24 hours. That is not how Kendrick moves. That is not how this camp operates. Kendrick is not a reactionary artist. Kendrick does not chase clout cycles. Kendrick does not jump out the window the moment a rival drops an album just to grab a news cycle. He waits, he calculates, he lets the noise burn itself out, and then he arrives at the exact moment the conversation needs him to arrive. Remember the timeline on Luther, the record that ended up dominating the airways for an entire era. People close to the camp have hinted that Luther was being shaped, polished, and refined for years before the public ever heard a single note of it. That is the work ethic we're dealing with. So when Top Dawg says something is coming and he can't tell you when, believe the spirit of the statement, but do not corner yourself into expecting it tonight. It might be next week, it might be next month, it might land the exact second Drake thinks he's caught his breath. The only thing we know for certain is that the gears are turning, and the gears are turning loudly enough that even the Godfather had to step back and warn us. Now let's zoom into another piece of the conversation that exploded inside that same room, because it tells you everything about how the Bay actually feels right now. There was a moment where one of the voices in the room tried to minimize the Bay's presence at the Super Bowl halftime show, calling it a small segment, a brief flash, a quick nod, and immediately the energy in the room corrected him. Because here's the truth nobody in the mainstream is willing to say out loud. The Super Bowl halftime show is the single largest stage on planet Earth for a music performance. There is no bigger room, there is no bigger camera, there is no bigger audience anywhere on the planet. So when Kendrick gave the Bay a window inside that show, he was not handing them crumbs. He was placing them on the global mantle. He brought the streets of the Bay onto a screen being watched by hundreds of millions of human beings at the same time. He brought their style, their slang, their rhythm, their pride, their flag into a moment that will live in cultural memory for decades. That is not a small segment. That is a coronation. And the second Drake tries to flip that same bass sound and turn it into a weapon against the very man who lifted them up, he's not just disrespecting Kendrick, he's disrespecting the entire region that finally got its global moment in the sun. So let us be brutally honest about the Iceman track in question. The song is not a tribute, the song is not a love letter, the song is a costume. It is a Halloween mask shaped like the Bay, worn by an artist who is using the disguise to throw a punch at a rival from across the country. And the worst part is that the punch does not even land. The flow feels borrowed, the energy feels rented, and the entire vibe sounds like somebody opened a YouTube search bar and typed the words "how to sound like Kendrick Lamar" before pressing record. It is the audio equivalent of a knockoff designer bag. The stitching is wrong, the logo is slightly off, the leather feels like plastic, and anybody who actually grew up inside this sound can spot the forgery from a mile away. There is a version of this conversation where Drake could have made a genuine Bay record, brought out real Bay legends, sat at the feet of the culture, and earned a piece of that lineage. He chose the opposite path. He chose mimicry over participation. He chose mockery over respect. And in doing so, he handed Kendrick Lamar the easiest setup in the history of modern rap. Because now, whatever Kendrick says back, however he chooses to answer, the entire region is already standing behind him with the door wide open and the porch light on. There is another layer here that nobody is talking about, and it is the psychology behind how Top Dawg dropped this information. Watch the clip again and pay attention to his face. He is not excited like a fan. He is not smug like somebody trying to be cute. He has the calm posture of a man who has already seen the ending of the movie and is choosing his words carefully so he doesn't get sued. That energy is impossible to fake. When somebody knows something concrete, their body language changes. The pauses get longer, the eye contact gets steadier, the smile gets quieter. That is exactly what happened in that clip. He did not oversell it, he did not turn it into a circus, he gave the smallest possible breadcrumb and then immediately retreated behind the legal shield of the NDA. That restraint is what makes the leaks so dangerous, because if it were nothing, he would not have to retreat at all. He could just laugh it off, change the subject, and move on. Instead, he placed the breadcrumb deliberately, made eye contact with the camera, and let the silence do the rest of the talking for him. Step back even further and look at the broader rhythm of the entire TDE camp right now. Every public appearance from the inner circle in the last few months has carried the same energy of quiet confidence. No panicked tweets, no emergency interviews, no defensive press runs. Just a slow, steady, almost smug calmness that radiates off everybody connected to that camp. That is not the energy of a team that is worried. That is the energy of a team that is sitting on a finished product, waiting for the right second to walk it out the front door. Drake is releasing albums, holding press conferences in his lyrics, dropping leaks, recording diss songs in the middle of an active lawsuit, and the other side is not flinching. They are not responding to every jab. They are not chasing the news cycle. That kind of silence is not weakness. That kind of silence is the loudest possible weapon you can hold in modern rap. And the moment Top Dawg almost broke that silence, even for a single sentence, the entire culture sat up straight in its seat and leaned forward. So if something is in fact coming, what could it realistically be? Let us walk through the possibilities responsibly, because none of this is confirmed and we owe the audience the truth. It could be a single record, a precision strike designed to swallow the conversation whole the way Not Like Us did. It could be an EP, a short controlled drop that lets Kendrick speak in measured doses without committing to a full album cycle. It could be a guest verse on a project from another major name, dropped at exactly the moment Drake thinks he has the floor. It could be a visual rollout that arrives without any warning, a music video that hits the timeline at 3 in the morning and rewrites every conversation by sunrise. It could even be something none of us have imagined yet, a format that doesn't fit any of the labels we currently have. And we have to be honest about this. We do not know. The whole point of the NDA is that we are not supposed to know. Top Dawg himself told us he cannot speak on it, so anything beyond that is speculation and we have to label it as such. But the runway is real, the signals are real, the studio time is real, the chemistry with Mustard is real, the discipline of the camp is real. Whatever shows up at the end of that runway, you can be certain it will not be ordinary in any sense of that word. And here's the cruelest twist in this entire story. Drake himself may have engineered the perfect environment for the response that is coming. By stacking the Iceman rollout with diss after diss, by aiming shots at Kendrick across multiple tracks, by trying to weaponize the bass sound in the process, he has rebuilt the same stage that nearly broke him the first time around. He has handed his rival a brand new microphone, a fresh spotlight, and a freshly furious audience waiting for blood. If something does drop from the Kendrick camp in the coming days or weeks, the timing will look surgical because Drake himself sharpened the blade. He created the demand. He filled the room with kerosene, and now a man who has signed an NDA is hinting, very carefully, that the match might already be sitting in somebody's hand.
We have to draw a clear line here because rumor culture is a dangerous game and we are not playing it. Nothing that Top Dawg said in that clip is a confirmed release. He never named a project, he never confirmed a date, he never said Kendrick Lamar is dropping anything in particular at any specific time. What he said, in his own words, is that he signed an NDA, that he cannot speak openly, and that fans should stay alert. Everything beyond that is interpretation. So if you are watching this and you are excited, channel that excitement into patience. Do not let anybody on the timeline sell you a hard date that does not exist. Do not let anybody screenshot fake track lists. Do not let anybody pass off speculation as fact in front of you. The only confirmed fact in this entire story is that a major figure inside the TDE camp dropped a calculated breadcrumb, and the culture is reading it the way the culture always reads breadcrumbs from people who actually know the truth. Look at the receipts one more time before you decide where to stand. Every artist who has been quietly working with Kendrick in the past year has come out of the studio sounding a little different, sounding a little sharper, sounding a little more focused. The producers around him do not speak in interviews unless they have to. The engineers around him do not post studio selfies for cheap clout. The entire ecosystem behaves with the discipline of a championship locker room that does not need to brag in February because they are already mapping out June. And inside that ecosystem, Top Dawg is the oldest voice. He is the man who watched Kendrick walk in as a kid carrying notebooks full of poems. And he is the man who watched that same kid grow into the artist who built the biggest halftime moment in history. So when that voice almost cracks the seal on something new, you do not need a press release to feel the weight. The history itself is the press release. The track record itself is the receipt. And the silence of everybody else in the camp is the loudest confirmation you will ever get. Listen one more time to the way the room reacted when Top Dawg dropped that line. Listen to how quickly somebody jumped in to cut him off. That reaction is the real story. Because nobody panics like that over a hollow tease. You only break the rhythm of a conversation that fast when the words about to come out next were genuinely dangerous. Strip away every theory and every receipt, and the simple fact that somebody felt the need to interrupt him is its own confirmation that he was standing inside a moment most of us will never witness. Hold on to that detail tonight. The look on his face, the weight of his pause, the speed of the cutoff. That combination almost never lies in this culture. So here's where I land after sitting with all of this. Top Dawg is not a clout chaser. Top Dawg is not a man who plays games with his credibility. He has spent more than a decade earning the trust of every serious listener in this culture, and he does not throw that trust away over a fake teaser. If he sat in that chair, looked into that camera, and said he signed an NDA and that something massive is incoming, I believe him. Not because I want to, not because it is convenient, but because the evidence supports it from every direction. The studio sessions supported, the Mustard reunion supported, the quiet posture of the entire TDE camp supported, the history of his previous NDA appearances supported, and the timing, dropping this teaser within hours of the Iceman album lifting off, supports it loudest of all. Something is being prepared in the dark right now, and the only question left is what shape it takes when it finally walks into the light. The clock is moving. The countdown is invisible but real, and the next time the timeline shakes, do not be surprised if the source of the earthquake is a man who has not said a word in public for what feels like an eternity. So now I'm turning the floor over to you. Tell me how this lands in your gut. Tell me whether you believe Top Dawg meant every word he said in that clip, or whether you think he was just stoking the fire to keep the conversation alive. Tell me what you think Kendrick is actually building inside that studio right now. Tell me what you think the move with Mustard is really shaping up to be. Tell me whether you think Drake even understands the avalanche he might be sliding toward by leaning on the bass sound the way he did. Drop every theory you have into the comments below. Slap the like button if you made it this far. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of this story when it actually breaks. And remember, the moment something happens, you will hear it here first. Stay alert, stay patient, and keep it alleged. Peace.